talk about a car, right? So in driving the car, we're supposed to have car insurance, right? Now, we can choose not to have car insurance, but it is the will of the law, is the law of the land, right? That everyone that drives has car insurance. Some people, even though that's the will, the vision, the law of the land, some people choose not to. And they're fine until something happens. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's God's will, vision, law, that we are in his purpose, in his will, that we do the things that he would delight in us doing. But we can choose not to. And oftentimes we choose not to until we get caught, we get in trouble, something happens. But when you, but the insurance companies, they don't come knock on your door every day. Do you have car insurance? They don't go door to door. Do you have car insurance? Where you pay your car note to? They're not, you understand? They aren't doing certain things. And so God is the same way. He's not saying, okay, are you doing what I told you to do? Am I doing what you? No, it's when you signed to buy the car and get the loan, you were told you have to have insurance. God is saying, I've told you my will. I've made it clear to you. And now you have a choice. You can either be in my will or not. You can either get insurance for your car or not. And if you get caught, something happens, it's because it's what you chose. And then oftentimes you get caught and then we come back to God. God, I need you to fix this because it was in my will. It wasn't in your will, but I need you to fix it because I messed it up. And then the great thing about God is that we can come back to him and just say, you know, we were hard-headed. I went my way. I didn't go your way, Lord. This is what you told me. This is what you showed me. But I still chose to do something different. So, I mean, it's almost like, and this isn't where I was going, but it's almost like, because I'm going to go where I was going, but I'm going to tie this into like the woman with the issue of blood. When in fact, we know that it was God's will for her to be healed. But in that, it was her will for people not to know. Why do I say that? For those of y'all that are listening, welcome to Faith and Focus. We're going to continue talking about the woman with the issue of blood, and we're going to get right into it now. Mark 5, verses 30 to 34. So, so we're looking at it from the perspective of our will versus God's will. When I read these scriptures and we begin to break it down, it's going to give you a little bit more understanding and clarity of what I'm talking about when I say that it was God's will for her to be healed and her will for people not to know. So, Mark 5:30 from the Amplified Bible, it says, and Jesus, recognizing in himself that the power proceeding from him had gone forth, turned around immediately in the crowd and said, who touched my clothes? And the disciples kept saying to him, You see the crowd pressing hard around you from all sides, and you ask, who touched me? Still, he kept looking around to see her who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had been done for her, though alarmed and frightened and trembling, fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has been restored to health due to your health has been restored based on your faith. Go in peace and continually be healed and freed from your disease. So it was a kind of a couple of different things. But since we started talking about the will of God, I want to bring that into perspective. So here's the thing, my perspective. So when I was reading this, the first thing that we know is last week we talked about contact, the connection, the position, and the proximity. So then when I'm reading, the second part of that, the first thing that it says is that Jesus recognizing that virtue had left, right? So it just goes back to, we talking about touching something, right? So if I'm touching, let's just say I don't have a little bit of lag, got a little bit of lag right here, right? So just say hypothetically, I'm touching this part of my shirt. I know that I'm touching it, but I can't feel it. It's the hem of my shirt. So he got so many people pressing up against him that I'm sure it wasn't this part of his shirt. It probably was like a long part of his robe based on the garments that they wore back in that time. I would actually even imagine it probably because they were talking about the hem. It was probably like the bottom part of a robe or whatever he was wearing. And it's kind of like, let me just get that corner piece. But in that, just like this is close to me, I can't feel this. So, like, how did Jesus know somebody touched that piece of his garment? Like, how did he? Because realistically, how can he feel that? And if you got so many people pressing against you, like we've been to concerts, we're all at a certain age where we know what it's like in old school Black Fridays, where we used to line up outside. It was exciting. On Thursday, we were planning out what we were going to do. And that Friday, we were out in the stores and we were out in the lines and we were waiting for the doors to open. And once the doors opened, everybody was running in for whatever that hottest item was that year for Christmas. Y'all remember that. I know I ain't the only one, right? Those were the fun days. Those were the days before Black Friday came in September and October. And you do it online in the comfort of your home. And you had people pressing up against each other and people fighting in the stores. Like, it was that type of pressing that, how did Jesus know that at all the places that he's being touched, that at this one particular place, somebody touched him? But not just somebody. Because it tells us in verse 32, he looked for her. Now the disciples are saying, yo, dude, God, Jesus, man, what are you talking about? Dog, all these people around pressing up against you? You asking us, really? You keep asking us who touched you. But in reality, Jesus wasn't really asking them the question for it to be answered because he already knew the answer. Just like when God approached Adam, after Adam and Eve ate the apple and they had sinned in the garden. And they were hiding behind fig leaves because now all of a sudden they knew they were naked. And God said, Adam, where are you? He wasn't guessing or trying to figure out, well, where's Adam? I don't see Adam. Where is he? Nah, he already knew. It's like us asking our kids, our grandkids, our nieces, our nephews and saying, what you doing? We already know you up to something. It's just a way of us letting you know that we know. And that's how God was with Adam in the garden. It was, Adam, I already know what y'all did. I'm just letting you know that I know. Like how you know you naked. And so when Jesus said in verse 32, and this was the verse that jumped out at me, it was like he looked for her. Now you just asked who? You just asked everybody who? Who touched me? Who touched me? Now you're looking for her? So that tells me all along you already knew who it was. So with that being said, and we talking about the will of God versus our will, the next part of that I'm going to bring this together is this woman is described as being sick for 12 years. And the Bible said she saw everybody she could possibly see. She spit everything she had. That means every specialist that it was. Every specialist. She spent the money. She was broke. And then she heard about Jesus. And it was like, hey, I done did everything I can do. I might as well try this. I might as well try this out. I might as well get myself into position and proximity and see if this right here, this is my last chance. This is all I got. But with all of that being said, why is it that once she was healed, because we know that when she touched his garment, she was immediately healed. Why is it that when Jesus said, who touched me, she didn't come forth? And we know that she didn't come forth right away because the Bible says that she was trembling and she was fearful. So we know she retreated. So when he's reaching out, who touched me, who touched me, she's retreating. Now you would think that after everything that she went through, that once she was healed, she'd be excited to tell everybody. She'd be like, it was me, Lord. It was me. I touched you. I touched you. I felt healed. I'm healed. I touched you. Just excited because we know she was healed, but she wasn't. Well, why? So here's my thoughts. My thoughts is that maybe she was that strong friend, that strong person that we know that always has it together, that didn't want to come forth because they didn't want to show people that at the end of the day that they're a human just like everybody else, that their superwoman or superman cape had some, that, and since it was a woman, let's just say the woman, that her superwoman cape had some holes in it, or the vase that she carries all the water that she pours out for other people had some cracks in it, and she needed to be made whole herself. Maybe she didn't want people to know that because of they might have changed their perception or perspective of who she was. Maybe she didn't think she was worthy enough to be healed because somebody told her that all her life she wasn't worth anything. So she didn't want to say that she was healed because now all of a sudden, even though this is something that she was really wanting, she felt that she wasn't worthy enough. I mean, it has to be some type of reason. Or maybe, just maybe, she said, if I touch the hem of his garment, I can be healed. And then she did it and she felt the healing. But then once reality struck that she was healed, all of a sudden, her faith began to waver. Now, why do I say that? I say that because in verse 34, he says, let me read it so I don't get it, so that I get it right. He said, daughter, your faith has restored you to health. Go in peace and be continually healed and freed from your disease. Like, why did he say be continually healed? Was it because she was thinking that, she had this healing and it was going to last for this short period of time, because now her faith began to waver, because it was like, oh my God, I'm really healed, but am I really healed? Like, did this really happen? Did she begin to second guess it? I mean, we will never really know, but we do know that based on the circumstances and based off of everything that she went through, she should not have hid. She should have been excited to say it was me. But the reality of it is this. Whenever we talk about her, we talk about the woman with the issue of blood. We never say the woman who had the issue of blood. So when we talk about God's will and our will, I say that it was God's will for her to be healed that day. It was God's will for her to be healed, and it was her initial will for people not to know. But it was God's will for people to know. So she had a chance to continue to stay in the crowd, which would have been her own will, or she could have came out and said, identified herself, which he already knew who she was, and it'd be within his will, because her healing wasn't necessarily for her. I believe her healing was for others. Because like I said, once she was healed, she was no longer the woman with an issue of blood. Her identity had changed.
Yeah.
And so when people began following Christ, they followed him because they believed the word that he was teaching. And some believed the signs, miracles, or wonders that they saw. So it was his will for her to come forth, so that those that needed to see the signs, wonders, and miracles, to see what had been done in her, how she had no longer been the woman with the issue of blood, but the woman that had been healed from the issue of blood. So that's how I put that into the perspective of the will of being in God, of God's will for us, and how we align our will up with his will based on this particular passage. But the other thing was about it was, once again, the identity aspect of it. And it's, once she was healed, she was no longer the same person. And sometimes we don't share what God has done in us or is doing through us, because it changes our identity. It changes our brand. It changes how people see us. It changes what people know about us. If God heals us in an area and we talk about being healed in that area, then that means we now have to say that we had issues or flaws in that area. That means we have to now expose ourselves in order to say that this is what God has done. We have to show our weakness. So when I read this particular passage, it was like just so many different things, but that verse that stood out to me was, he looked for her. He asked who, but he looked for her. So then my question is to you, to everybody that's listening, is, what is it that God has done that has changed your brand, your identity, how you're labeled, how people see you, that you have refused to share because people will see you differently? Thanks for tuning in on Faith and Focus. If you like it, share it, and we'll see you again next week. Be blessed.
Hit the bell, like, share, and subscribe.